ومن أحسن قولا ممن دعا إلى الله وعمل صالحا وقال إنني من المسلمين.
Alhamdulillah wa salatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. The issue of music in Islam is something that traditionally there hasn't been a lot of debate over because of the vast majority of scholars that have come together to say it's haram. Recently, this debate has really kicked off online, and we see our brother Nouman Ali Khan that he spoke about this issue. Now, before you guys all start getting in a big, hoo-ha about why are you talking about it online and why don't you speak to him on private, I did. Me and our brother Eddie from the Deen Show, when this issue was brought to us, we reached out to Nouman Ali Khan, and in a way to do it with nasiha, privately, we set up a WhatsApp group. As you can see the picture on your screen, this is June 20th, 2023. So that means more than a year and a half ago. And we invited him and he joined the group, and he said he wanted to bring some experts. So he brought two more people in who I don't know personally. One he said was a faqih, and one he said was a hadith scholar, to review the evidences. And all the evidences that I'm going to present to you, I presented to them in the group. The response was not academic. He decided to leave the group and say, you know what, I'm going to stick to my opinion. No response. So I gave him a year, and our brother Eddie from the Deen Show is a witness to this, that look, review the evidences. If you have evidences, show them to us and I'll change my view. But if you don't, then don't go around making videos and posting about why music's halal without understanding the issue from an academic perspective, and bring any experts you like. All of them left the group with no responses. So I waited a year. It's been a year and a half now. So now we're going to address the issue. Our brother Nouman Ali Khan, he said,
I needed to understand the prohibition of music. I really wanted to grasp it. And there are several ahadith that talk about this issue. And the problem with me is I recognize the limit of my area of expertise. I am not a specialist in hadith by any stretch of the imagination. I'm a student of hadith for my own benefit, but I don't talk about it public. I don't lecture on it because that's not my area of expertise or my area of research.
No, it's very important. You heard what he said. Again, I appreciate the fact that he recognizes his field of expertise, but then he goes on to do exactly what he said he doesn't do, which is talk about hadith, criticize hadith, which are in Bukhari. And again, so why would you do that if that's not your field of expertise? And to say that I spoke to a hadith scholar, but I can't mention his name, and he won't say it publicly, and this is just not valid. This is not the way Islamic academics work. He continues.
My area of research is Quran. So my first question was, where is music talked about in Quran? Nowhere. It's not there. The one place where you can argue it might be there is Surah Luqman. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَشْتَرِي لَهْوَ الْحَدِيثِ لِيُضِلَّ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Surah Luqman, among the people is someone who purchases vain speech to misguide others from the path of Allah. And the vain speech, lahwa al-hadith, the opinion, the famous opinion regarding it from Ibn Abbas is this is referring to music. So then the ayah would mean among the people is someone who purchases music. So now all of a sudden, this became a Quran studies issue, right? But Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu has an opinion, and there are several other Sahaba who have several other opinions. And fun enough, the opinion of Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu that's recorded in Ibn Kathir is not authentic. It's not authentic. The chain includes someone who's considered a drunkard.
Now here's the problem. You see, in the beginning, he clearly said that hadith is not his field, and he doesn't talk about hadith, and he doesn't criticize hadith. And then he goes on to do exactly that. And to say the chain has a drunkard is a very harsh criticism of a hadith that is no doubt authentic. And I will prove it, inshallah, in this video, with scans of each book, evidences, chains, and all of that. You can't say I don't know about hadith and then criticize hadith and call narrators drunks without even mentioning who they are. Which narrator? I asked him this on the group. Which narrators are drunk? I'm going to show you the chain. and go through each narrator and show me where is the drunk. Okay? And it's not just one chain. And it's not just Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma who said that Lahu al-Hadith in Surah Luqman includes music. And if other Sahaba mention other things that would also be included in useless or vain talks, doesn't mean that music is not included. It's not a contradiction here. Now, let's take this from the top. Let's take this from the Quran itself. In the tafsir of Ibn Abi Hatim, which is one of the earliest tafasir, he mentions the riwayah from Abdullah ibn Abbas, and it's on your screen. Now, notice that the students of Abdullah ibn Abbas have also narrated the same thing on their own, Qatada and Mujahid and Abdullah ibn Abbas, and you'll notice on the bottom that these are authentic. These have been checked as sahih chains that mention from Abdullah ibn Abbas, from Qatada, from Mujahid, saying that Lahu al-Hadith in Surah Luqman is a reference to music. So in the Quran, it does mention this. Now, what I want to show you here, this is Mawsu'a Tafsir al-Mathur, which is a collection of all of the narrations from the Prophet ﷺ and Sahaba and Tabi'un and later scholars about the meaning of the Quran with chains and narrations checking. In it, not only through a single chain, now please look at this, from 6 independent chains from Sa'id ibn Jubair and other Abu Salih and other students, Atiyah and Mujahid and Dahak and other scholars who took this knowledge from Abdullah ibn Abbas, all of them with their own independent chains, they mention Abdullah ibn Abbas held this opinion. That means it's not like a single chain. These are 6 different chains, authentic, right there on your screen. Now, look at the next page that we have here. Again, from Abdullah ibn Abbas, and he mentioned this authentically, from Hasan al-Basri, from Ata, other ulama from the Tabi'un, they all took this to mean that this is a reference to music. It's not just Abdullah ibn Abbas, who, by the way, was from the greatest scholars of hadith, greatest scholars of tafsir, the one that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, may Allah give him the understanding of wahi. So when Abdullah ibn Abbas has an opinion in tafsir, authentically established, we definitely take this. But the other sahabi that I'm going to mention here, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, from the great scholars of Sahaba, from the one that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, take Quran from him. So again, now you look at the caliber of Sahaba we're talking about. Abdullah ibn Abbas, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, here the narration from him, and Ikramah and Sa'id ibn Jubair, they're all mentioned here. Now, and I'm going to discuss the narration from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud in detail. I'm going to go through the whole sanad, but I want to show you the other narrations as well. Mujahid, again, not through a single chain, but through 5 different chains here. Dahak and others, they have all said that this is a reference to music in the Quran. Now, let's take Ubayd ibn Umair, Hasan al-Basri, Sa'id ibn Jubair, Ata, all of them, same opinion. So, don't just say it's like one narration from Abdullah ibn Abbas and others give different opinions. No. There are tons of narrations from different Sahaba and different Tabi'un that all said that this means music. Now, when we look at a chain, we don't just say, I heard from somebody who won't mention their name and I can't mention them and they won't talk about... No. We're going to give evidences. This is from the Sunan al-Kabir of al-Bayhaqi. And this has the narration from Abdullah ibn Abbas that you said. Now, this is reported from Abdullah ibn Muhammad, who's famously known as Ibn Abi Dunya, from Zuhair ibn Harb, who was a great scholar and faqih and thiqa, from Jarir ibn Hazim, which is another strong, salih narrator, as Al-Dhahabi has said, from Ata ibn Sa'ib, the great tabi'i and scholar, from Sa'id ibn Jubair, one of the fuqaha of Medina, from Abdullah ibn Abbas, radiyallahu anhuma, that says that this ayah with lahu al-hadith is reference to music. Now, where's the drunk? Where's the drunk? How dare you say something about a chain like this? Prove it. And this is why I gave you a year and a half to go research it, to discuss it offline so I don't have to do this in public. But because you didn't respond, and our brother Eddie from the Deen shows is a witness to this, we have to do this in public. Where's the drunk? Now, continuing on, next page. This is the hadith from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. It's also mentioned with the same meaning that this ayah in the Quran shows that music is haram. And Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said, Wallahi al-ghina. He says, I swear by Allah that this is a reference to ghina. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, the great Sahabi, the Faqih, the Mufassir, the Muhaddith, the one that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, take Quran from him, take the understanding of the Quran. What did he say? He says, this ayah shows that music is haram, and he took qasam by it. And as you can see, this is sahih. It was authentic by Ibn Abi Dunya and by Ibn Jareen in his tafsir and others. And we'll talk about Al-Baghawi and others. So now, when we look at the authenticity of ahadith, one of the greatest scholars in this field from the past, I'm not even getting to contemporary scholars, is Ibn Hajar Asqalani. The famous Ibn Hajar Asqalani has a famous takhrij book, a checking of hadith, talkhis. And here he says about the hadith of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, where Abdullah ibn Mas'ud takes qasam, who says, Wallah, this is ghina. He says, Bi-isnad al-sahih, it is authentic. Ibn Abi Shaybah had reported it authentically. And then he says about this that Al-Hakim and Al-Bayhaqi all considered it to be sahih, as Ibn Hajar Asqalani does himself. In the Mustadrak of Al-Hakim, I've given out here the entire chain again. Now, I'm going to go through the entire chain again with you, okay? So know, is there any weak narrator in this hadith, any drunk in this, okay? Now, this is reported from Abu al-Abbas, Muhammad ibn Yaqub. Who is he? As I've listed out, handwritten my notes from checking each narrator here. He is an imam, a muhaddith, the musnad of his asr, the one that the people would take chain from, al-hafiz, memorizer of hadith, faqih, a shafi'i, scholar, no doubt to his authenticity, right? Who does he report it from? From Bakkar ibn Qutayba al-Qadi, who was a famous scholar and judge, Qadi al-Kabir, Allama, Muhaddith, a Hanafi faqih of the Hanafi madhab. Who does he report it from? Safwan ibn Isa al-Qadi, again, a great scholar, somebody who was a judge. And Abu Hatim said about him that he's salih. Muhammad ibn Sa'ad said that he's thiqa and salih, that he is a strong narrator and a qadi, an Islamic judge. Who did they report it from? Humayd, Kharrat, and that is one of the great scholars of hadith as well. Ibn Abi Hatim said that Yahya bin Ma'in said about him that he is thiqa, that he is strong in hadith, and laysa bihi bas, there is no criticism of him. Now, if we continue, he's from Ammar, from Sa'id ibn Jubair, onwards, all reliable scholars of hadith, all the way to the tabi'un, from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, who said that this ayah, wallahi, is referencing to music, and Al-Hakim also said that it's authentic, and Al-Dhahabi agreed with him. So, where's the drunk? Right? No doubt, not just through Abdullah ibn Abbas, but Abdullah ibn Mas'ud and other Sahaba, and a great number of tabi'un authentically said that this ayah includes the tahrim, the haram of music. It is in the Quran. Now, are there hadith? Our brother Nouman Ali Khan said,
okay, there are these ahadith. Then I go to Dr. Akram Nadwi. Tell me about these ahadith. None of them reach the degree of sahih.
Now, again, when you're talking about hadith now, when you just said you're not going to talk about hadith and this is not your field, again, that's disturbing. This hadith that you're referencing is in the Sahih of Imam al-Bukhari. Some of the ulama said it's mu'allaqan, that it's not a part of the Sahih itself, as mu'allaq is usually a hadith that Imam Bukhari uses in his chapter titles without the chain. But if you look at the hadith here, it actually has the entire chain. Even Imam Bukhari says qala here, referencing the beginning of the sanad, it does not mean that it's mu'allaq in the sense that he doesn't include it as a part of his Sahih. So this hadith that you're talking about is in Sahih al-Bukhari. That should be enough for us to say, okay, especially if you're not an expert in the field of hadith, you shouldn't be saying that it doesn't reach the level of being authentic. But just for fun, let's take this hadith apart. The greatest or the best known and the most popular explanation of Sahih al-Bukhari is a book called Fath al-Bari by Ibn Hajar Asqalani, the great Shafi'i scholar and hadith scholar. What does he do? He checks this chain to particularly clarify that this is not mu'allaq in the sense of not having the sanad. And even with its narrators that are there, he says that this hadith is hadith sahihan, it is authentic ala shart al-Bukhari, upon the the conditions of al-Bukhari. It meets the level of criteria of Imam Bukhari. And he says that again, and I've highlighted it twice on the page there. So what does it mean? No doubt, this hadith is sahih according to the conditions of Imam al-Bukhari in his sahih, as Ibn Hajar Asqalani has mentioned. Now, let's take some contemporary scholars. We've been taking the classic scholars. One of the best known scholars of hadith in our time, who has done an amazing work of rechecking and going over ahadith from the past, looking the opinions of different scholars, is Shaykh Albani. Well known, needs no introduction. In his Mawsu', collecting the hadith that he graded to be sahih, this hadith is there. Obviously, it's in Bukhari. But he discusses it and he says this hadith is sahih. So Shaykh Albani thought it to be sahih. One of the greatest fuqaha of our time, scholars of fiqh and usul, Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, in his book Sharh al-Mumti', as you have it scanned on your screen, what does he say? Al-hadith la shak fi sihhatihi. It is a hadith that there is no doubt to its authenticity. So Ibn Hajar Asqalani, Al-Hakim, Bayhaqi, later scholars like Shaykh Albani, Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, all agreed that this hadith in Bukhari is sahih. And now you're coming out and saying that they don't reach the level of sahih?
Even if you're convinced it's haram, is there enough scholarship? And when I spoke to the Hanafi ulama, they're like, we have no issue with it. We have no issue with it. I went to traditional South Asian Hanafi ulama in private gatherings, no issues. They won't say it in public. Privately, they said no issues.
Now, this is really disturbing. First thing, you won't mention who these ulama are. Secondly, you will say that these ulama themselves will not say this in public. So why are you mentioning this in public? If this is something private between you and them, then keep it private. And if they're ashamed to say this publicly, then there's something wrong. And just to say I've met Hanafi ulama or Shafi'i ulama or Maliki ulama doesn't tell us anything. The madhab is not just a particular scholar's opinion. Regarding this issue, there are ulama who have written entire works to say there is ijma', there is consensus that music is haram. Now, you could argue that point, that there is an ijma' and so on, but that's not even what I'm discussing here. When you talk about the madhahib, you have to reference the books of that madhab and the mu'tamad, the relied upon books of the madhab. Now, if you're going to say the Hanafi madhab and Shafi'i and Maliki and so on allow music, they don't say this is haram, then give us a reference from a book or name a scholar. You can't just say I met somebody somewhere and they won't even mention who they are and they won't mention it publicly and then quote it. Here, I'm going to show you. This is from Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, the great Khalifa, the pious man who led the Ummah without a doubt. In his time, when some of the people started to allow music, what did he say? He said, you're openly allowing musical instruments and wind instruments is an innovation in Islam. He said, this is something that was never done before. And he criticized the people and condemned them for such a thing. From that early on, the Hanafi scholar Abu Layth as-Samarqandi, in more than one place, he says that the proofs, and I've scanned them, they're on your screen right there, the proofs of prohibition music, listening to singing, dancing, and all of that is from the kitab, from the Quran and the Sunnah, wal ijma' al-ummah. What does the great Hanafi scholars here say? That according to the consensus of the Muslim Ummah, this is haram. The great Maliki scholar Ibn Abdul Barr, in his Ilm wa Fadlihi, he mentioned that the study of music, entertainment is rejected and discarded according to all of the adherents of all of the divine religions based upon knowledge and faith. Not only of this Ummah, Al-Adyan, all of the different faiths, if you go to the true followers of those faiths, according to Ibn Abdul Barr al-Maliki, he says this is something that has been forbidden. Now, we'll continue. The great Shafi'i scholar Al-Baghawi, in his Sharh al-Sunnah, in his amazing work, he says scholars of Islam have come to an agreement of prohibition of wind instruments, instruments of entertainment, musical instruments, stringed instruments, that there is an agreement of the scholars of Islam that this is haram. Now, Ibn Hajar al-Haythami, not to be confused with Ibn Hajar Asqalani, Ibn Hajar al-Haythami, the Shafi'i faqih, the one that we go back to know the last verdicts in the Shafi'i madhab, he also says that by the consensus of the ummah, this is haram, as you can see. Now, the greatest scholars of the Hanbali madhab, the famous scholar Ibn Qudama, Muwaffaquddin, Ibn Qudama, Al-Maqdisi, Al-Hanbali, the one who wrote Al-Mughni, in Al-Mughni, right there on your screen, he shows that there is an agreement of this ummah that this is haram. I'm not just saying I met a scholar and I met him and he won't mention his name. That I'm giving you scans for each one from all the madahib. This is from Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali. In his explanation of Sahih al-Bukhari, he also says that by the consensus, ijma' of this ummah, listening to musical instruments is haram. By the ijma' of this ummah. Now, when we go to Al-Qurtubi, the great scholar of tafsir, he has Jami' al-Ahkam al-Quran, Al-Qurtubi, what does he say? He goes, with regards to flutes, stringed instruments, drums, there is no difference of scholarly opinion that it is haram to listen to them. These are scholars that are showing ijma' of this ummah. Now, what about the four madahib from the a'imma themselves? In Ruh al-Ma'ani, Al-Alusi, the great scholar of tafsir, he talks about Abu Hanifa, and he is a Hanafi scholar himself. He said Abu Hanifa forbids listening to musical instruments, all types of trombones, drums, even the striking of sticks to make a musical sound. Abu Hanifa prohibited it. So don't tell me the Hanafis are fine with it. Abu Hanifa wasn't fine with it, and his madhab is not fine with it. Right? Now, Ibn al-Qayyim, in fact, he goes on, he wrote a whole book on this issue. He says the madhab Abu Hanifa is the strictest in regards to this, and he comments that they are amongst the harshest, and his companions clearly stated that it is haram to listen to all musical instruments such as the flute, the drum, the tapping of a stick. They stated that it is a sin, which implies that the person is a fasiq, is a sinner or open sinner whose testimony should be rejected. And they went further than that, and they said that listening to music is fisq, is sinful, and enjoying it is kufr. This is a Hanafi madhab. I'm not saying that I take this opinion, but just to let you know that this is how strict the Hanafi madhab was on this issue that you're making light of today. Imam Shafi'i, in his own which his students collected, what does he say? He says music's haram. Imam Shafi'i. If you look at the Maliki opinion, as Ibn Abdul Barr has mentioned already, and the Hanbali opinion, which has been mentioned, as Ibn Jawzi, he mentioned that Imam Ahmad considered all music to be haram, except whatever there is an exception for, and we'll discuss that inshallah. But here, to summarize, I want to bring to you the work of Shaykh al-Islam Taqiyuddin ibn Taymiyyah, Abu al-Abbas, one of the great scholars, well known as Shaykh al-Islam, in his Majmu' al-Fatawa. What does he say? He says the madahib al-arba, all four of the madahib, they agree that music is haram. All four of the madahib. Right? So, from the contemporary scholars like Shaykh Abdulaziz ibn Baz, Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen, Shaykh Salih al-Fawzan, Shaykh Albani, so on, they will also find these clear verdicts that music's haram. Some people might say, well, there is a scholar that took another opinion. Ibn Hazm took another opinion, or this scholar took another opinion. And that may be. Just because a scholar held an opinion doesn't mean that it's okay for you to follow it. There is a beautiful statement from one of the great four A'imma, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. He said, if you took from the concession of every scholar or from the mistake of every scholar, you would gather together every source of evil. And I have this statement on your screen. What does that mean? We don't just say, oh, a particular scholar said it's okay, so it must be okay. No, we look at the evidences. The Quran clearly, as the Sahaba have explained, show music is haram. Sahih ahadith in the Sahih of Imam al-Bukhari that have been checked by Ibn Hajar and others clearly show music is haram. Many of the Sahaba have clear statements, as Ibn al-Qayyim has mentioned, that music, it grows hypocrisy in the heart. Having known all this, you can't just say, well, there is ikhtilaf on the issue. There is such a great scholarly consensus on this that you could even make an argument for ijma'. Now, I'm going to mention a couple of things where people make a kind of shubha, a doubt, to try to get away from this. They say, well, there is a hadith where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sitting and little girls were playing the daf and he allowed it, so that means music's halal. No. We always have an a general rule, and a khas, a particular exception. For example, dhuhr is prayed 4. But if you're traveling, you pray it 2. But that's an exception to the rule for traveling, not for all times. You can't be sitting at home praying 2, saying, well, there's a hadith of Rasulullah prayed 2. Well, you have to look at the situation. This hadith, as reported in Al-Bukhari, from Aisha radiallahu anha, mentioned that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came and he sat down, and there were little girls that were playing the duff, talking about one of the battles of Islam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam turned his head. Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, he got upset. What did he say? He said the instruments of shaitan in the presence of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Notice the first thing, the Sahaba understood musical instruments are instruments of shaitan. The Prophet ﷺ, he turned to him, he said, let them be, it's the day of Eid. He didn't say, no, they're not the instruments of shaitan. He didn't say they're halal. He just said, for this day, for these girls, let them play. So what does that mean? That the general rule is that these are instruments of shaitan that are haram. The exception to that rule is for the day of Eid, or as another hadith will mention about weddings and things, for girls to play the duff, only the duff, not guitars and all that, would be permissible. That's an exception. That is their hadith, and we accept that, as Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal said as well. And this is supported by the hadith that Ibn Majah and At-Tirmidhi have mentioned from a reliable chain, where he says the difference between halal and haram, meaning talking about the weddings, is the one that is with the duff and sound, meaning that if you play the duff with the sound to announce the wedding, this is halal for that situation, not for all situations. So understanding this, when we look at from the earliest scholars, from the Sahaba and Tabi'un onwards, musical instruments in general are haram. No doubt to that. Now, are there exceptions to the rule? Yes. At times like Eid or weddings, if little girls sit and play the duff for a little enjoyment, there is nothing wrong with that. But you can't translate that to mean that you're going to go throw on Metallica and throw on NWA and throw on these things and just listen to them and call it halal. No. You don't play with the religion. Now, there is another doubt people put forward. They say, well, music's everywhere. What do we got to do? Put corks in our ears when we're walking through a mall? No. There's a difference between hearing something that you don't intend to hear and something that you attentively go and listen to, right? Meaning that if you're going to go for a job interview and you're sitting in the lobby and there's music playing, you didn't go for that intention. And if you have no power to turn it off, then you are not held responsible for that which is out of your control. That's just something in the passing. And it being everywhere doesn't make it halal. Gossiping is everywhere. Lying is everywhere. Women dressed inappropriately is everywhere. Any mall you go to go buy clothes, or any shopping center you go to buy milk, you're going to have women that are not dressed appropriately and men that are not dressed appropriately. Does that mean that it's halal? No. You don't make that excuse. You do your best. If you go somewhere and there's a poster of a woman or a man not dressed appropriately, and you happen to see it because you walk in the store, that's not a sin on you. You look away. But that's different from you going and searching up a website and watching videos or something. Don't equate the two. The same with music. You go to a mall and there's music playing in the background. You go shop, do what you got to do, get out. That's not your sin. But if you go to Spotify or whatever, Apple Music or YouTube Music, and you start listening to songs, that's different. Now, the next shubha that I will deal with. A lot of people do listen to music. That is true. And that doesn't make you kafir. Like, we're not saying that this is an issue of kufr. But don't call it halal. If you have a personal weakness, sometimes maybe you're feeling down and you throw some blues on or, whatever. That's between you and Allah. People sin, they make mistakes. Make tawbah to Allah. Hopefully between salawat and the good deeds that you do will erase these bad deeds. But don't halalify it. Don't try to change the deen of Allah. Don't try to take away from the Quran. Don't weaken ahadith in al-Bukhari. This is important. We all have sins and mistakes. But to justify haram and call it halal, that's a line you shouldn't cross.
أحسن قولا ممن دعا إلى الله وعمل صالحا وقال إنني من المسلمين.